The elegant dining room at Le Petit Jardin felt suffocating despite its high ceilings and sprawling windows. I adjusted my napkin, trying to maintain composure as my mother's words cut through the air like perfectly polished knives. Of course Emma got another promotion, Mom beamed, reaching across the table to squeeze my sister's hand. Senior vice president at just 32. Now that's what I call success. I took a small sip of water, already knowing what was coming. These monthly family dinners had become an exercise in endurance, a carefully choreographed dance of praise for Emma and thinly veiled disappointment in me. And Sarah. Mom turned to me, her smile cooling several degrees. Still doing that little consulting thing? The way she said consulting made it sound like I was selling magazine subscriptions door to door. I forced a polite smile. Yes, Mom. Still consulting. Oh, honey, she sighed, exchanging a loaded glance with my father. When are you going to get a real job? You're 29 now. It's time to stop playing around and get serious about your career. Emma smirked behind her wine glass. She loved these moments, when all of Mom's criticism was directed at me instead of her. I am serious about my career, I said quietly, cutting into my barely touched salmon. My business is doing well. Dad cleared his throat. Doing well? Sarah, you live in that tiny apartment downtown. You drive a 5-year-old car. Meanwhile, your sister just bought a house in Brighton Hills. With a pool, Emma added helpfully. We just want what's best for you. Mom reached across to pat my hand condescendingly. Maybe Emma could put in a word for you at her company? They always need people in administration. The suggestion hung in the air like cheap perfume. I withdrew my hand. I don't need a job at Emma's company. Don't be proud, Sarah. Mom's voice sharpened. Pride won't pay your bills. Let's be honest, you'll never amount to anything if you keep going down this path. The restaurant seemed to go quiet, though I knew it was just the blood rushing in my ears. Emma was practically gleaming with satisfaction. Dad studied his plate, avoiding eye contact as usual. You know what's sad? Mom continued, warming to her topic. You had such potential in college. Top of your class at Harvard Business School. But look at you now, while Emma's climbing the corporate ladder, you're just... She waved her hand dismissively, consulting. Just then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the message and felt a calm settle over me. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Excuse me, I said, standing up. I need to step outside for a moment. Really, Sarah? Mom's disapproval radiated across the table. In the middle of dinner? I smiled. Trust me, Mom. This is one call I need to take. As I walked toward the restaurant's entrance, I could hear Emma's stage whisper. Probably another one of her tiny clients canceling. If only they knew. Outside, my assistant Michael was waiting by the valet stand, holding a leather portfolio. His usual professional demeanor barely contained his excitement. Everything's ready? I asked quietly. He nodded. All the paperwork is prepared. Would you like me to? Yes, I cut him off, my smile growing. Give me 2 minutes, then bring it in. I returned to the table where Mom was still extolling Emma's latest achievements. The board practically begged her to take the position, she was saying. That's what real success looks like. You're right, Mom, I said, settling back into my chair. That is what success looks like. Speaking of which, the maitre d' appeared at our table, Michael right behind him. Pardon the interruption, he said smoothly, but Ms. Walker's assistant has some urgent documents requiring her immediate attention. Michael stepped forward, opening the portfolio. Ma'am, your $80 million acquisition is ready for final signatures. The board is waiting for your approval to proceed. The silence that fell over our table was absolute. Dad's fork clattered against his plate. Emma's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. And Mom's face went through a fascinating series of expressions as she tried to process what she'd just heard. Mom's face drained of color as she stared at the papers in Michael's hands. The elegant letterhead of Walker Consulting Group, my little consulting thing, was clearly visible at the top of each document. There must be some mistake, Emma stammered, leaning forward to get a better look. $80 million? Michael maintained his professional composure, though I caught the slight twitch of amusement at the corner of his mouth. No mistake, Ms. Walker. This acquisition represents the merger of Thompson Technologies into Walker Consulting Group's growing portfolio. Once signed, It will make us the largest independent consulting firm in the Northeast. Dad finally found his voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. Thompson Technologies? But they're a Fortune 500 company? Yes, I said calmly, taking the pen Michael offered. They've been struggling with modernization. Their board approached us 3 months ago about a potential acquisition. We've been quietly negotiating ever since. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for her wine glass. But how? You're just consulting? I finished for her, signing the first page with a flourish. You know, it's funny. While you were all focused on Emma's corporate climbing, I was building something of my own. That little consulting thing you've been mocking? We started with 3 clients my first year. Now we have offices in 6 cities and a client list that includes half the companies in the S&P 500. Emma's face had turned an interesting shade of red. That's impossible. You live in that small apartment downtown. Your car. I laughed softly, initialing another page. You mean my modest lifestyle? Did it ever occur to you that some people don't need to flaunt their success? That penthouse apartment you mock? I own the building. That 5-year-old car? I drive it because it's reliable and I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Michael cleared his throat gently. Ms. Walker, the board is waiting for final confirmation. Shall I inform them the papers are signed? Yes, please do. I handed him back the portfolio. And Michael, make sure the press release goes out first thing tomorrow morning. He nodded and stepped away, leaving us in thick silence. I took a sip of my water, enjoying the rare sight of my family completely speechless. Sarah, Dad began, his voice uncertain. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what exactly? I set my glass down carefully. That while Emma was getting her promotions, I was building a company from the ground up. That those long hours you criticized me for were spent creating something valuable? Would you have even believed me? Mom's lips trembled. But all those times we offered to help you. You mean all those times you offered to get me an entry-level position at Emma's company? I corrected her. All those times you told me to be realistic and stop dreaming? Why would I tell you anything when you'd already decided I was a failure? The weight of years of dismissal and criticism hung heavy in the air. I thought back to all the family gatherings where I sat quietly while they praised Emma's achievements. All the times Mom had introduced me to her friends with that slight tone of apology in her voice. All the times Dad had suggested I was wasting my potential. Last year, I continued, my voice steady, when Emma got her promotion to VP, you threw her a party at the country club. Do you remember what you said in your toast, Mom? This is what a successful daughter looks like. Well, take a good look now. I reached into my purse and pulled out a business magazine I'd been saving for this moment. There on the cover was my photo under the headline, 30 Under 30, The Rising Stars of Business. I slid it across the table. Page 27, I said quietly. There's quite a nice profile about Walker Consulting Group. About how we're revolutionizing the industry. About our 97% client retention rate. About our projected billion-dollar valuation by next year. Emma snatched up the magazine, flipping through it frantically. Mom leaned over her shoulder, her hands shaking as she read the article. Dad just sat there looking like someone had hit him with a brick. But you never said anything, he whispered. All these years. Would it have mattered? I asked. You'd already decided Emma was the successful one. The achiever. The daughter you could be proud of. I was just, what was it you said, Mom? Never going to amount to anything. Michael appeared at my elbow again. Ms. Walker, I apologize for the interruption, but the board chairman is requesting a brief video conference to finalize the details. I stood up, smoothing my dress. Thank you, Michael. Please let him know I'll be there in a moment. I turned back to my family, who were still staring at me like they'd never seen me before. If you'll excuse me, I have an $80 million acquisition to complete. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. I believe Emma was about to tell us more about her promotion. The look on their faces as I walked away was worth every moment of doubt, every dismissive comment, every condescending suggestion they'd ever made. But this wasn't just about proving them wrong. This was about proving myself right. Outside the restaurant, my driver James had already brought the car around, not the 5-year-old Honda I usually drove, but the Bentley I kept for special occasions. As I settled into the back seat, I could see my family through the restaurant's window, still frozen in their seats, the magazine open between them. "Where to, Ms. Walker?" James asked. I smiled, thinking of the board meeting waiting for me, of the press release that would shock the business world tomorrow, of the years of work finally coming to fruition. "The office, James. We have an empire to build." The next morning I sat in my top-floor office, watching the sun rise over the city skyline. The wall-mounted screens displayed various news channels, all running the same headline: Walker Consulting Group acquires Thomson Technologies in $80 million deal. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the press release went live at 6 a.m. I turned it to silent after the 20th call from Mom. There were dozens of missed calls and messages from both parents, Emma, and even extended family members who'd suddenly remembered my existence. "Ms. Walker." Michael appeared at my door. "The Thomson Tech transition team is ready in the main conference room. And..." He hesitated. "Your sister is in the lobby." I raised an eyebrow. "Emma." That was faster than I expected. "She's been here since 7 a.m. Says she won't leave until she speaks with you." I checked the time, 9:30. "Let her wait another half hour. Then bring her up." The next 30 minutes were a whirlwind of video calls and signatures. The Thomson Tech acquisition was just the beginning. We had 3 more major deals in the pipeline, each carefully planned and positioned. While my family had been dismissing my little consulting thing, I'd been methodically building an empire. At exactly 10 a.m., Michael escorted Emma into my office. She looked oddly small in the vast space, her designer suit somehow less impressive against the backdrop of floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art. Her eyes darted around, taking in the expansive view, the elegant furnishings, the multiple awards lining the walls. "Nice office," she said stiffly. "Must be new." 3 years now," I replied, not bothering to get up from behind my desk. "Though you'd know that if you'd ever bothered to visit." "How would I? You never told us about any of this." Her voice rose slightly. "All this time you've been, what? Secretly running some massive company?" I leaned back in my chair. "Not secretly. Walker Consulting Group has been featured in Business Weekly twice this year alone. We won Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year award last fall. There was quite a nice write-up in the Times about it. But I suppose you were all too busy celebrating your latest promotion to notice." Emma's face flushed. "That's not fair. How were we supposed to know?" "You could have asked," I said simply. "Any time in the past 7 years, you could have shown even a slight interest in what I was doing. Instead, you were too busy looking down your nose at my little consulting thing to notice it was growing into something bigger than your entire corporate division." She sank into one of the visitor chairs, looking deflated. "Mom's been crying all morning." "I'm sure she has." I kept my voice neutral. Finding out her failure of a daughter is actually a success must be quite shocking for her. "She feels terrible. We all do. The things we said." "The things you've been saying for years," I corrected her. "This isn't about one dinner, Emma. This is about a pattern. A lifetime of being treated like I was somehow less than you because I chose a different path." Michael appeared at the door again. "Ms. Walker, the Thomson Tech Board is ready for you." "Thank you, Michael." I stood up, straightening my jacket. "Emma, I have a company to run. Was there something specific you needed?" She stood too, smoothing her skirt nervously. "Actually, yes. I was hoping, well, with your connections now, maybe we could discuss some potential collaboration between our companies." I stared at her for a long moment, almost admiring the audacity. "Let me get this straight. Less than 24 hours ago you were mocking my career choices. Now you want to collaborate?" "It makes good business sense," she argued. "Our companies could benefit from..." "Your company," I cut her off, "is one of thousands that might want to work with Walker Consulting Group. If they're interested, they can submit a proposal through the proper channels. Being my sister doesn't give you special access. But we're family. Funny how that only matters now." I walked to the door, then paused. "You know what the difference is between us, Emma? You climbed the corporate ladder. I built my own ladder. And now that I'm at the top, I get to decide who climbs it." The conference room was full of executives when I entered, all rising to their feet. These were the people who had believed in my vision, who had seen my potential when my own family couldn't. As I took my place at the head of the table, I caught my reflection in the window, confident, powerful, successful. "Ladies and gentlemen, I began, let's discuss the future of Thompson Technologies under the Walker Consulting Group umbrella. The meeting lasted hours, but I was in my element. This was what I had built, what I had sacrificed for, what I had achieved while my family was busy underestimating me. And it was only the beginning. When I finally returned to my office that evening, Michael handed me a stack of messages. On top was a note that Mom and Dad had stopped by, waited for 3 hours, and finally left when I didn't become available. They asked when you'd be free for dinner, Michael said. To talk things over as a family. I smiled, thinking of all the family dinners where I'd sat quietly enduring their judgment. Tell them my schedule is quite full, I replied. In fact, I'll be traveling for the next few weeks. We're opening our London office. As the city lights began to twinkle outside my window, I thought about how success was the best revenge. But it wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about proving to myself that I could do it, that I could build something meaningful, something lasting. My phone buzzed again, another message from Mom. This one read, "We're so sorry, sweetheart. Please let us make it up to you." I set the phone aside without responding. They'd had years to support me, to believe in me, to be proud of me. Now they would have years to regret that they hadn't.